The first shove landed in broad daylight, right under a sky so blue it felt like a lie. Laughter cut through the air like broken glass as the cheerleader staggered, pom-poms tumbling from her hands, her smile collapsing into something small and wounded. The bullies leaned in closer, convinced they owned the moment, convinced she would fold the way she always did. They didn't know that beneath the red and white uniform lived a strength her father had etched into her bones, lesson by lesson, not for hurting others, but for surviving. And when the crowd inhaled as one, expecting her to fall, she planted her feet instead. If you believe stories like this matter, stories about kindness, second chances, and finding courage when it feels impossible, take a second to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel and stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. Her name was Marin Vale, and the day the bullies mocked her wasn't special in any calendar sense. It was a school afternoon drenched in sunlight, banners fluttering along the football field, music drifting from open doors. Marin had learned to love daylight because it hid fewer secrets. Nights were harder, heavy with memories of a small kitchen table and a father whose hands shook when the news came on. Her dad, Calder Vale, had been a quiet man with a disciplined spine, the kind who believed preparation was kindness and calm was power. He never taught her to throw the first blow. He taught her how to stand when the world leaned hard. He taught her balance, breath, and the simple truth that panic lies. Those lessons had been stitched into Marin's muscles long before she ever learned to cheer. At school, though, she was known for other things. She was known for being the cheerleader who didn't party, the girl who left practice early to help at home, the one who flinched when voices rose. A group of players took that flinch as permission. Their jokes started as whispers and grew into performances. They mimicked her routines, mocked her father without knowing his name, and made her uniform feel like a costume she hadn't earned. Teachers saw fragments, never the whole, and daylight kept pretending everything was fine. Marin carried her fear like a glass cup filled to the brim, careful not to spill. Each day she told herself to endure. Each day she heard her father's voice anyway, reminding her that endurance didn't mean erasure. She remembered his mornings, the way he made tea and waited for the kettle instead of rushing, how he insisted that calm wasn't weakness. He had taught her to read a room the way sailors read weather, to notice shifts before storms broke. He had taught her to move only when moving was necessary. The challenge that afternoon came dressed as laughter. It came with hands where they didn't belong, with a shove meant to be funny. The crowd circled, a ring of phones and grins, and Marin felt the old heat crawl up her neck. Her breath shortened, the glass cup trembled, she could hear her heart too loud. For a blink, the past threatened to pull her under. Then she grounded herself the way Calder had shown her, feet steady, breath long, eyes up. The world sharpened, the noise blurred into distance. She chose not to be small. What happened next wasn't rage. It was clarity. She didn't swing wildly or chase applause. She stepped in, used leverage, redirected momentum. The bully's own confidence betrayed him, and the ground met him with an unglamorous thud. The laughter died, another lunged, thinking strength was speed, and learned otherwise. One by one, bravado dissolved into shock, and the ring broke apart like mist under sun. It was over as quickly as it began. No blood, no spectacle, just gravity and consequences, daylight and truth. Silence followed, heavy and strange. Marin stood there breathing, her uniform scuffed, her hands steady. She hadn't wanted to hurt anyone. She wanted it to stop. Teachers rushed in, voices overlapping, but the crowd had already changed. Some faces showed embarrassment, some relief, some awe. A few phones lowered. Someone picked up her pom-poms and held them out to her like an apology. The aftermath wasn't easy. There were meetings and policies, stern looks and careful words. There were questions that assumed guilt, because confidence in a girl is still mistaken for aggression. Marin answered calmly. She told the truth without flair. She described fear without dramatics. She spoke of boundaries. She didn't mention her father until someone asked how she knew what to do. When she did, she spoke of mornings and tea, of lessons meant for safety, not dominance. The room listened differently then. Word traveled fast, but it traveled crooked. Some praised her as a hero, others warned her to be careful, as if self-respect were a crime. Marin learned that change rarely arrives clean. It drags mud on its boots. Yet something had shifted. The hallway stairs softened. The jokes stopped. A few students she barely knew thanked her quietly. One girl asked if she could sit with Marin at lunch because the table felt safer now. At home that evening, Daylight slanted through the windows, painting the walls gold. Calder noticed the scuff on her shoe and the tired set of her shoulders. He listened more than he spoke. When she finished, he nodded once, pride flickering across his face like a candle steadied from draft. He reminded her that strength is a responsibility, that stopping harm doesn't require cruelty, that courage doesn't always look loud. They ate dinner in peace. The news murmured. The kettle sang. Daylight lingered. The days that followed tested her resolve in quieter ways. The bullies faced consequences that were long overdue, and resentment simmered at the edges. Marin felt eyes on her back again, this time weighing her. She felt the pressure to become a symbol she never asked to be. When fear whispered that she should disappear, she chose visibility instead. She volunteered to help younger students with practice. She smiled without apology. She learned that bravery, once claimed, demands maintenance. A week later, during another sunlit afternoon, the principal invited Marin to speak at an assembly about respect and safety. She almost said no. Public rooms still made her chest tight. Then she remembered the girl at lunch and the quiet thanks. She remembered that endurance doesn't mean erasure. Standing on the stage, she didn't posture or preach. She told a simple story about boundaries and breath, about choosing calm over chaos. She said daylight is for seeing each other clearly. The room listened. The ripple widened. A coach updated training. A counselor opened a new group. Teachers paid closer attention to laughter that cut too sharply. None of it was perfect. All of it mattered. Marin learned that change is a series of small corrections, not a single dramatic drop. Near the end of the semester, a student who had once laughed the loudest found her by the lockers. He looked smaller somehow, the armor cracked. He didn't ask for forgiveness with grand gestures. He acknowledged harm. He promised to do better. Marin accepted the apology without erasing the past. Second chances, she knew, are seeds, not guarantees. They need care. On the final practice before summer, the field glowed under a generous sun. Marin led the routine with a steadiness that felt earned. She felt her father's lessons in every balanced step, not as a weapon but as a compass. When the music ended, applause rose, not the wild kind that burns out fast, but the warm kind that settles into memory. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you of the quiet strength it takes to stand up and the kindness it takes to change, please engage with this video, like it, share it, and tell us what it meant to you. Your voice turns stories into community. Before we end, drop a comment with the word daylight if you believe courage should always be seen. Marin walked off the field that day into a future that felt wider than before. She hadn't dropped anyone to prove power. She had dropped fear to claim space. And in the clear, honest light of day, she learned that the truest combat her father taught her was how to stand without becoming hard, how to protect without becoming cruel, and how to let the sun find you when you finally stop hiding.